Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another Nacho Tuesday. And today I have Nawal here with HireHunch, and today we're going to talk about his company and what they do over there. And we're also going to talk about HR and tech hiring trends, and ultimately how to build the ultimate dream tech team, which he has a lot of experience with. So without further ado, we'd love if you can give us a brief elevator pitch for what your company does.
Sure, Randy. And thanks a lot for setting this up and inviting me over here. And I do have some lovely audience also. Just good evening to all of them. And yeah, to get started with what HireHunch is primarily all about, I think HireHunch is primarily an interview as a service company. While we do have interview as a service as one of our core offerings, there are some ancillary offerings as well on our platform, which is more into pre-employment testing software as well as video interview softwares, and all of this coherently actually turns out to be a full stack solution whenever a company is basically trying to do technical assessment of the candidates.
Perfect. And what got you to where you're at in your career here, starting HireHunch? How did you get started in the tech field, and what gave you the idea for HireHunch?
This is I think the story goes back to I think early 2018, while I was working as a head of engineering at one of the company. And earlier, while most of my engineering time used to go in like vetting the candidates, doing the initial level of screening, doing n number of interviews. I don't even recall that how many number of interviews I would have done in the past, but definitely something, if I try to approximate it, it will be close to 500 plus interviews in my early career. I'm talking about. Post that, while I was at my leadership role, I could see my engineering team going through again the similar kind of pain. Right, whenever we used to have a morning stand up, most of the time my team members used to come to me and say like, okay, yesterday my whole day was occupied all interviewing x number of candidates. And the subsequent question was, okay, how many of them got shortlisted? Probably the answer was no. I don't think none of them were of really of a great quality to get onboarded for, even for, or get interviewed for the subsequent rounds. And that's where this idea clicked in from, that why don't we go ahead and outsource this entire set of the first level interviews, because technical interviews are more about it can be objectified to some certain extent comparatively to non-technical functions where it's more of subjective in nature, right? So we tried exploring a couple of partners or vendors who had been there existent in India. Fortunately slash unfortunately, could not find any niche player. We got very much inspired by one of the company based out of out of US. That's Karat. I'm not sure if you've heard about them, but we got very much inspired by them, what they have built so far. And that's why we thought like though this was just one of my problem where I faced as an engineering leader, but definitely I did not get started right in 2018. I interviewed multiple people, when I say multiple people, I interviewed a couple of, engineering leaders across, and everyone was going through a similar kind of challenge. Be it, early stage company, be it, Series C, Series D funded companies as well. I'm not talking about the biggies like, Amazon and so-called fine companies, right? Uh, though this was one of the instances, but there were a couple of, other instances also where people across, companies used to do interviews for other companies, but on a pro bono basis. Like, let's say I'm a backend engineer and I don't have enough knowledge on, let's say, automation, right? And automation, I do have some superficial knowledge, but am I the right person to actually go ahead and vet the candidate on their core technical aspect? Probably not, right? And if I'm hiring my first automation lead in my team, that needs to be vetted by someone, right?
Yeah.
And that's why people used to take a pro bono support of their friends and buddies around. And while it was being done in on a pro bono basis, this again clicked on an idea of thought of like, why don't we go ahead and build a platform around this? Did some initial exercise in early 2019 timeframe where we tried to figure out what can be the TAM of this, and a couple of other data insights which we tried to pull up. But again, uh, be it a founder, everyone has his own journey and own personal runway also to build across, right?
Yeah.
And that's what made me to uh, continue on this while doing some parallel activities around sometime in time frame in 2019. But COVID was definitely a turnaround for me, because there were initial apprehensions around if if a interviewer from some other product based companies or some other companies, right, would be really interviewing candidates for other companies while being in their office, right?
Oh, geez.
But with COVID definitely there was that apprehension which completely went off, all because most of these engineers had been sitting remote, and while they had some idle, I would say idle non-working hours, they can deploy these hours for more productive session. And that's why we never called it like interview. We wanted two great engineers to be connected to one another, share knowledge, and during the course of their interaction, the interviewer should be able to gauge out whether he or she would be really willing to work with the fellow with whom he just interacted.
Yep. So you had a hunch
So,
there.
so, so so that's where and the name something which was interesting before even we started, we had put this name across all because we are brainstorming on this, and then we said that probably we are not the one who are really claiming that this candidate will definitely get selected because there are tons of other parameters which goes after our round of vetting, right? So we said, okay, we are just raising a hunch towards hiring someone over here, and there might be n number of mechanism in the later part of the our journey. So let's get started with one single thing where we are vetting the candidates and putting them across, saying, okay, the probability of this guy getting selected or getting an offer at your end is probably 70% or 80%. So that hunch word struck so deeply that we got ahead and we got something which was HireHunch. And again, we did not put anything around interviews because that's not something which we are primarily focused. We will only be doing this. What we wanted to solve over here: how do we help great companies to build their awesome dream tech team, and that should be happen with ease and quick, right? And again, when I say dream tech team, every company at their different stages do they have different dreams, and they do have different dream tech team.
Yep. So what other challenges would you say there are for building and managing a high performing tech team?
Uh, I would say, with my all the experiences I had, I would say there's a lot of challenge. There's a lot of, I think the list will go endless if I really start on this. But managing a high performing team or building a high performing team, I think what primarily strikes in my mind is more about talent acquisition and retention is really difficult in tech industry, given the competitiveness you have, given the kind of, high turnover we do have. And trust me, your tech team can make or break your company, which internally is your, make or break your product, right?
Yeah.
So, so, so having this as an, having this as one of the top-facing challenge for any company to, build their initial tech team and manage them. I think the topmost thing, which again strikes on my mind, is more of a culture alignment, right? Because what from my experiences I have seen is like there's a bit of difference between most of the the tech culture and the organizational culture, because balancing the unique culture of tech teams, which I have often seen as being characterized by innovation, kind of autonomy and flat hierarchies, right?
Yeah.
So I don't mean that the organizational culture doesn't or organizational culture is not characterized by these things. Having said this, these are very very peculiar in any engineer, right? So that's where they are very kind of you know more data driven, more operate in a kind of I would say black and white way. There's nothing called gray for them, mostly because they might be working with binaries day in day out, and that's how they start thinking, right? That's one thing which I can talk about. Then essentially, whenever you hire your initial set of team, the company evolves and your tech team also evolves over the time, right? And in while you want to gain speed in the entire scheme of the things during your business progression or your product involvement, there's a lot of tech debt which is being created behind the scene, and all these tech debts and this evolving technology adoption is another factor for the tech teams, right? The framework keeps on changing. Every techie wants to become itchy to try the different frameworks.
They want to
If
use
you are
their one.
not giving a kind of sorry Andy.
Oh yeah, a lot of them want to use their own approach too. They always say the other engineer didn't do it right, and they got to do it their way.
Yeah, exactly. So most of these engineers, especially in their early phases, are very itchy in nature, right? They hear about some framework, they want to adopt that, right? And while business continuity is equally important, you can't be just doing R&D all the time, right? Now, how do you strike the right balance given the limited bandwidth, which always we all go through this kind of limited bandwidth challenge? And probably this is what we are trying to solve also through interview as a service. And we need to be empathetic about the tech team that they do have their tech debts, they do have their evolving technology adoption, and and all of it comes with a limited bandwidth. Apart from that, while your company is evolving, you are also, as an engineering leader, you are also trying to build your next 10x team or your next rockstar engineering team, right? And you want to hire the great folks around. There has to be people who has to do all the required screening, required interviewing, right? And
Mm.
again, these same senior set of engineers are also deployed for vetting the candidates. So it's all about the limited bandwidth, where we need to equally empathize with all of this, maintaining or striking the right balance between the business continuity and empathy
Yeah.
with the tech team.
So how do you
Uh,
strike that balance, say, with the short and long-term hiring practices, right? Sometimes a lot of startups are in high growth mode and they just need immediate butts and seats, if you will, as opposed to, maybe finding a better long-term fit and investing more time and energy into the process to really find that ideal fit. Sometimes startups are just growing so fast and they just need to put people in. What kind of recommendations do you have for startups kind of in that growth mode?
Uh, I would rather, being an engineering leader, first I will try to understand, is it something which is really a virtual anxiety that I do have to build an immediate team, or I do have something where I really need to look into long term. For this, you actually need to go back and see whether a certain piece which you want to build for an immediate, or where you do have the immediate hiring needs, is it a build versus buy? That's very, very, very important, I would say. Right,
Yeah.
first thing to exercise for an engineering leader, that whatever you want to build, is it going to be a core product feature where you need to build a lot of intelligence down the line, or is it something which is more of a bit of contextual, where someone comes and plugs in and builds that component for you and your team is happily using that outright? And to have that kind of comparison, and post that, whatever exercise you do from your end, thinking about long term and short term, I think for a short term you can always outsource certain pieces or bring contractors, all right, and deploy your core team for your long term product goals and all. And besides, every company has, their hiring strategy, when to hire generalist, when to hire specialist, right? So you need to
Yeah.
prioritize your critical roles, define strategic hiring goals, and all of this comes with only with a proper communication and transparency with the team. Otherwise, if you're hiring some contractors, if you're hiring some full-time workers, there are chances that you might have motivation, demotivation among the team members. Why someone is being treated differently. So there has to be proper communication and transparency with the team about the hiring plan, immediate needs, and long-term strategies. And this fosters majorly a sense of trust and alignment, right?
Yeah. And you would say, generally at the beginning of the company, it's better to hire generalists, and then as your company grows, it's easier to get maybe specialists to kind of fill in certain roles because they're, I mean, if they're spending their whole day and their entire career on a specific, say it's back end or say it's a working
Mm.
with certain types of APIs, you're going to want those specialist roles as you grow your company, as opposed to initially you want a well-rounded player that can just kind of wear a bunch of hats and get your tech off the ground, right?
Yeah, that's definitely there. And that's what when we also started building our engineering team, we focused on having, full stack engineers at the beginning, right?
Mm.
Because full stack engineers, all because you can't afford to have a number of engineers, or you can't even afford to have some engineers from Google or Amazon, so on, right? So you need to be very lean in the way how you build your initial team. And if they are all generalists, they choose their path after probably a couple of years, which part of the technology stack they are enjoying, where there's more of business intelligence, where there's more of I would say vision procurement, more on the UI screens, or like some. I came across a great engineer who was very much inclined towards colors, and he said, like, after a couple of years, he said, like, okay, I love colors, and that's where I would choose to grow my career on the front end part of the things, because he wanted people to see what is there on the website or what is there on the application.
Mm.
All right. So it completely depends on the interest, and we should give a platform where they will be able to pursue this and match their career aspirations as well. And that basically carves out a path for them to be a specialist from a generalist role.
Definitely. And does HireHunch provide any tools or dashboards or any sort of data that provides any sort of insights into the hiring process? How does your platform work exactly?
That's what primarily we are over here for. Interview as a service was mainly built out to cater to your immediate requirements, where you do have a new let's say you do have a new product initiative which is going to come up, right, and your current team is not suffice enough. You want to do onboard, let's say, 50 engineers down the line in a quarter, right? Obviously, all of these set of engineers might not be equipped, so capacity or capability challenges both might be with your internal set of panels. But all of these candidates need to go through some certain kind of vetting, which might be an assessment or which might be an interview, right?
Yeah.
And this requires a lot of, again, engineering bandwidth, right? So how do you cater to this, that you can scale up your interviews, right, for
Yeah.
this quarter, right? And then so bulk interviews is something which we do provide primarily. Coming to the insights part, we do give informative decisions about anyone being interviewed at our end, so that hiring manager has some predictive signals whether the candidate really needs to be taken through the subsequent rounds of interviews, or even those cases we try to highlight that whether the candidate can be onboarded, but probably for a one down role kind of thing, right? Apart from that, even if you go for a route of partnership with staffing or service-based companies, all of these candidates eventually needs to be vetted, right? You can't
Yeah.
just onboard 100 contractors,
Yeah.
right?
Get out of control really quickly. So how do you balance the the value of soft skills versus the hard skills, right? So you run them through the test, kind of understand like what they could actually do from a development standpoint. What about maybe some of the soft skills that you guys look for?
Uh, I would say primarily we focus a lot on technical aspects. We do a deep technical assessment. Having said that, during the course of the interaction, if there are some of the soft skills which has been highlighted by the company, we try to keep a check on that and try to we don't go ahead and actually ask any explicit questions on the soft skill parameters, because that's anyways a bit of again, as I was talking about core versus context. What we try to assess over here, what is these core aspects about those technology stack, right? What are his or her problem solving approaches towards a particular problem, right? uh, Most of these cultural rounds are not being assessed at our end. These are subsequent rounds which are being done most of the times through the HR and other things. But having said all of this, we do try to highlight if there is something as a red flag which comes during the course of the interaction. We try to highlight those so that company doesn't need to invest further time on interviewing or assessing those parameters which are more related around soft skills.
Definitely. And so a lot back to a lot of companies going through high growth. What other tips would you offer for managers kind of to better manage that growth effectively, right? Obviously, they have tools like HireHunch available, but do you have any other tips available for people to be able to effectively manage growing a team and properly ensuring that they're onboarded correctly? As you mentioned, not just hiring a bunch of contractors and having everything, having everything willy nilly.
Right? No, definitely something which is very important over here. We try to build a lot of strategies around, business strategies. Then comes, product strategies. One thing which I have seen missing across is like, no one goes and focuses, tries to build how do you develop a scalable recruitment strategy, right? And when I say recruitment strategy, it simply means how do you understand your growth projections, right? How do you proactively do the workforce planning, right? And apart from that, obviously, as you said, right, people have been leveraging on tools and platforms like ours and a lot of companies have been also adopting ATS. But agile recruitment process is something which again I would like to highlight that with the ongoing trend, as a leader you need to be agile enough to adopt those technologies, stay flexible, adopt to changing priorities, and iterate on the recruitment strategies rather than sticking to your old ways of that something like you pass a skill assessment, you do the interviews, and you go through a regular process. You need to keep on an eye on what is evolving, what is coming up in the technology world, what are other ways of weighting the candidates. Is interviewing now we are serving as serving interviews to our customers, but still I still feel that is interviewing the future. This is something which someone as an engineering leader needs to continuously think through to really refine their processes to onboard their next set of 10x engineers, right?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of companies are always kind of just filling seats on an ad hoc basis. It's like a fire drill. It's like, quick, we need an
As,
engineer for this. Go put a resume out there and or go put a job posting out there and see if we can track some resumes. But it's better to
yeah,
plan it
yeah.
out correctly.
And data-driven decision making is another thing which I have seen most of the times it is being missed, or people managing on their ATS or managing on their Excel sheet. But where's that data where they can utilize the recruitment analytics, right? Some of the ATS definitely provides those kind of analytics, but then there has to be a bandwidth, there has to be a dedication towards looking those or making some looking at those insights and making some value out of those, right? This
Yeah.
is something which I have seen missing for most of the hiring managers or might be even talent acquisition folks.
Yeah. That's a great point. So I guess, do you have any examples of organizations that are effectively managing their growth?
Definitely, there's FANG, which everyone has been talking about, but specific to every company has made a rapid growth focusing on certain things. I think Amazon really has a strong emphasis on their leadership principles. Google places a strong emphasis again on culture of innovation, right? Similarly, Netflix has a culture that values freedom and responsibilities, right?
Mhm.
And Stripe is one company of which I was recently reading about, and they really value a lot on the culture of remote work, attracting talent from various locations, and fostering a kind of diverse workforce.
Yep. And how valuable do you think the perk of remote work is for engineers as an attracting benefit or perk for bringing people into your company?
Sorry, I didn't get the last part of it.
How valuable do you think offering remote work as a perk is for companies in today's business environment?
I think remote work is good because you have an access of you know talented pool across the globe, right? You are not limited to some certain boundaries and restrictions, right? While that is a good part to have, but then again, it needs to be channeled through an effective communication mechanism. Not sure if every company at their different stages will be equipped for with all the required tools, which is required actually for a remote collaboration and having different kind of discussion. The one major challenge which I see with the remote team is I would call it knowledge osmosis, where fresh set of engineers being onboarded, sitting remote, and trying to go through 100 lines of thousands lines of code and not trying to, and even if trying to have an available time from some senior engineer, not able to pull it out. But what happens in a kind of in office culture, even on a even while having your lunch on a table, you are talking about some latest technologies, trends, right? So there's a lot of knowledge which flows across, and there's an osmosis effect for all of these engineers to grab through, right? And not only this, they stay very close to the business aspects, right? So otherwise, it is always your town hall or your quarterly meetings that you get to know about what business is all thinking about. But otherwise, a firefighting situation, everyone on the floor gets to understand how things are moving, right?
Mhm.
And it's very easy to grab someone immediately, right? Rather than trying to figure out a time and schedule for someone and then connecting over the call. Another thing which we really missed out during those remote days is like Friday catch up with the
Yeah,
buddies because yeah, when you have a week straight odd period, you want to relax, you want to chill out with your buddies as well.
yeah.
Talk something might be even nonsense, but talk something outside of your daily engagements.
Builds more camaraderie than just doing Google Meets all the time.
Yeah, yeah. And it has its own fatigue, right?
Mhm.
Uh, you can't be on subsequent calls back to back, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely been there. So I guess, do you have any funny experiences from as a hiring manager that's interviewed, hundreds and hundreds of people? Do you have any funny stories that kind of stick out from that whole process without naming names or anything, of course?
Uh, as a hiring manager, I had many at that point of time, but I would rather, go back to our initial days of entrepreneurship while, and this is my first time entrepreneurship 3 years back. I jumped on this journey. While being a techie, you try to build your product first, but somewhere I was not somewhere, bite by the opinion that you go and build your product right on day zero. It took us 6 months to understand customer, understand their behavior to go ahead and build even our MVP. And that's where we are operating very much in an offline fashion.
Mhm.
I remember when we started with interview as a service, there was one candidate whose interview was somehow scheduled at our end, and this was basically assigned to someone again, someone as an interviewer who was basically his manager himself. So that was really, really, a funny thing which happened. Uh, while that manager called us up and said, like, okay, my teammate XYZ is looking out for a job I did not know, and you guys have, scheduled interview interview of that candidate along with me. I don't know either I should take up this interview or what should I do? Or because all of these intelligence you can build on the platform side. Otherwise, you have to do a very manual check on the operational standpoint, right? If the candidate belongs to, let's say, company X, and the interviewer who is gonna interview and who is a freelance interviewer on our platform, right? Who is gonna interview is turns out to be a manager of that guy from the same company X, right?
Yeah.
And then something happened, and it was really, kind of embarrassing for us. And then somewhere we had to get him convinced that, even if this has happened, I think you should speak the way how it has been so far, right? And anyways, we had to decline that particular interview and assign it to some other interviewer.
Yeah.
But yeah, these are some of the learnings which I had, and this was the very first logic which we probably built on the platform once our MVP was out, that we cannot assign to the interviewer from the same company.
Yeah, a lot of times you learn best by doing. So,
Yeah, yeah.
if the thing I found with a lot of entrepreneurs is the ones closer to the problem themselves that have actually been through it really understand how to most effectively solve the problem and
Yeah,
actually get.
and moreover, you can't be building all of the intelligence, all of the if else, all of the use cases right on day zero on platform, right? So
Yeah,
some of such things is bound to happen, but then you need to understand the criticality of the thing, which is more critical for you, and then you need to stitch around, build your product roadmap,
yeah,
which has its own time, right? So
definitely. Yeah, get that MVP done right, right? To solve the
yeah,
customer
yeah.
problem in the simplest way possible. Then you could always add more features after that. That's the other thing I've seen too is sometimes people just start building a bunch of features and they haven't solved the core problem yet.
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect. So I guess what other HR tools should managers be aware of? HireHunch, of course, is a great tool that everybody should use. Is there anything else that a hiring manager should consider using to assist in the hiring process?
Uh, I would say whatever part HireHunch has not been able to cover, that is something there are a lot of other tools to use about. But when it comes to technical assessment, I think we are trying to do a full stack solutioning over here. So HireHunch is the only solution. There are alternate solutions definitely, but HireHunch is one of the best platform to be used at. Apart from assessment, there's different pieces into HR tech industry, right? Where we are not into job boards, right? That we post a job board and people from across the globe will be able to apply through that particular job post, right? While LinkedIn is doing job to some certain extent, but I still believe that there's some kind of screening, some kind of vetting that needs to happen, which
Yeah,
LinkedIn doesn't provision currently. But there are a lot of other tools I have heard about. Some early age startups also in India probably Cut Short or InstaHire are doing some great job,
mm,
right? This is on the job boarding part, and post that, even if our assessment is being done from our end, then comes the onboarding part. So there are multiple such, I would say, business units of an HR tech itself or an HR system itself. Zoho is trying to build everything out.
of
So,
course.
so that's another example, right? So,
So I guess for high growth startups, what tips do you offer for attracting talent? Obviously, it's a very competitive marketplace. What kind of we mentioned remote work being a perk, but do you have any other tips for how a high flying startup can attract the right talent and gravitate people towards their company as opposed to maybe a competitor product?
uh, I would say for a tech founder, it becomes super easy. But for a non-tech founder,
Yeah,
it becomes tons a bit difficult. And that's what I have been hearing out from most of the founders with whom we have partnered so far, right?
yeah,
That a non-tech co-founder somewhere needs to really or be able to resonate with the I would again bring that organizational culture versus tech culture,
yeah,
which turns out to be a bit different, where it is more of engineers have their different way of uh, trying to grasp some certain things and trying to they are more inherently analytical and curious, right? So what turns out to be that for a non-tech co-founder, they need to really articulate their vision.
yeah,
They need to be very very as transparent as they can, because as I said, right, 0 to 1, there's nothing gray while you speak to engineers, while you try to deal with them, right?
yeah,
uh, Purely be focused on what is the kind of impact that the person who is getting onboarded might be able to bring.
yeah,
Show your commitment. That's another thing that you can't be just walking on the things and just talking about the things, but not be able to work on the certain aspects, right? Um, and again, uh, I think non-tech founders also need to leverage a lot on their network to bring really great techies.
yeah,
Demonstrate some domain expertise. I know they're not technical, but then again, they can showcase their expertise in the industry, in the market in which they have been there.
yeah. Yeah, I'd agree
Apart
with
from
that.
that,
I
already,
think
yeah,
a
yeah,
lot A lot of these business people they can't communicate the same way engineers do, right? So they'll give you very subjective feedback to the engineers, and engineers really want detailed instructions, like in a very matter-of-fact tone, almost like a math equation. Like, do you want 1 + 1 = 2, or tell me what you need here, right? So I feel like a lot of these business managers don't really effectively communicate with them properly.
Yeah, and I think if I have to talk about one single thing that any, non-tech co-founder needs to bring their, be as transparent as you can about the challenges, about the kind of, impact that the person will be able to bring, because there's nothing called gray in an engineer's world.
Yep. Yeah, and it's good to have a technical co-founder too, just so you can have that checks and balances, right? So, you can ensure that the work actually that the engineers are producing is actually checked and verified, as opposed to just going out and building something only to realize that you have a lot of tech debt later and it's not going to work, and you run into those scaling issues then.
Yeah.
So I guess what's next for HireHunch? Are there any last takeaways you want the audience to remember about your product?
Oh, definitely. So it's been 3+ years for us on this journey. We started with interview as a service. Now we do have a couple of ancillary products around things, but we are still aligned with our one single mission of building a great tech team, or in fact building a dream tech team for the hiring companies. Right. We are just getting started, and we are here to disrupt the tech hiring space. In 3 years, we have really achieved phenomenal. Stood out to be the most trusted interview marketplace, especially in the Indian ecosystem. We have a plan to go global now, and that's where we are into webinars, podcast, multiple efforts being taken on the digital front as well. That being in India, how do we place our products outside of India? Right. Eventually, on the product standpoint, currently we remain focused on these three particular products, but we do have some plans, and we wish there would be a day where on the platform, you as a hiring manager come on the platform, you upload a JD, and I give you a plethora of pre-vetted candidates with the required hunch that how likely is this particular guy to get selected at your end, eventually join your company, right? But again, to build this out on the platform is a journey, right?
Certainly. Well, it's just seems like you guys are getting out there, and I've seen you guys around before you ended up on the Nacho SaaS marketplace, of course. So whatever you guys are doing in marketing is working. But once again, really thank you guys for coming on today. And for anybody interested in HireHunch, you could check it out today in the Nacho B2B SaaS marketplace, or you can go to HireHunch.com and you can learn more about their company and their services there. Once again, thanks so much for coming on today, Nawal. And happy, well, I guess it's Thanksgiving over here in the U.S., but I know you guys just got off Diwali over there, so happy post Diwali, I guess.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for pulling out your time and making me available out here. By the way, this was my first webinar being an entrepreneur, and glad to be here, getting started on this right from today.
Well, you handled it like a pro, so thanks again for coming on today.